Well, Merry Christmas, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is episode 108 of the magical show right here for all of you terrific folks out there in Internet land. It's good to see everybody. Love that little animation. I'm going to run that tomorrow. But as always, we're just couldn't be more grateful to all of our fans and friends and members especially. So thought maybe we'd start off that little Christmas thing with a little Christmas thing. So how's everybody doing? We did interesting questions set tonight, things that we wish were true but probably aren't. Just a quick little update on yours truly. A couple of these questions actually impact this. By the way, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but this thing went off like incredibly smoothly today, so something horrible's got to happen. Is it recording? It is. How about that? We had all kinds of things. The cues were perfect. Everything worked out. Getting the hang of this after 109 tries, 108 tries, something like that. Anyway, I was down in Florida this last weekend, and Richard Dew says he's triggered by the Christmas animation. I don't blame you, buddy. The snowflakes falling. They're going to put an eye out. That's maybe the funniest comment I've seen in a long time. Yeah, I should put a trigger warning on front of that Christmas thing. I was down in Florida. I did an event very briefly in Palm Beach. I was just down there for one night. It's a long way to go for one night. But this one was worth it, and it was for Turning Point USA, which is Charlie Kirk's organization of conservatives on campus. And I think this guy is just great. I think he's just great. And we had, 300 young conservatives there, sharp kids. I bounced some programming ideas off of them. And I might as well just bounce a few, programming ideas off of you guys. I think last week I showed, or last episode I showed the trailer for the Nexus report. That's going to be some members-only content that we're going to be doing. I have I'm waiting. I just can't seem to find it. I've got it here. I'm just looking around one more time on my desktop here. But we're going to be doing a brand new, our friend Ian Branson, who's a big Stratolounger from way back and did all the terrific work on Speakeasy and all the rest, is working hard right now. In fact, he's probably not watching the show on account of him working so hard on this, but we're going to have a complete top to bottom, and I mean a complete top to bottom redo of the website. And it's going to be really spectacular. It's long overdue. It's going to be really, it's going to look modern. It's going to look a little more like the hot sites out here. I want to see if I can do this without. Let's just do it the safe way. Hate to have the eyes roaming around here. I really would like to find that mock-up. But in any event, we did get the bottom banner done. Ian himself did a makeup of the banner that based on this. So I'll show you the new look, although this won't be the top banner. Here's, hopefully this will just come right up. So here's the final version of the Common Sense Resistance Bill Whittle Year 3, and this we're going to stick with for a while. This will be like this. A lot of things looking pretty cool. So there we go. And I like this a lot. It took me a long time to get all of the... there's Ian. He's... You're taking a break from working? Get back to work, man. Ian, if you can email me that mock-up you did, that would be great. And then I'll load that up too. Anyway, this is the final version of the bottom banner. I like it a lot. It took me forever to get those people exactly the way I wanted them, but I just really like it a lot. Hang on a sec, little sip of tea here. And the thing I like about it is it gives you the sense of, the common sense resistance. And I like the fact that looking at this picture, you can't tell what race or ethnicity any of these people are, but it is, it does look multiracial, multi-ethnic, but the thing I like about it is everybody's dressed. Everybody looks like winners. They look like they've got things to do, and they look like they've got places to be, and they look cool. It's all kind of got this real great Reservoir Dogs kind of a vibe on it. And I think this will probably be the bottom banner on the new website, because what Ian did with the top banner is he just kept the BillWhittle.com Common Sense Resistance, Drop the People, and he's emailing me the just this. You got to understand, this is a super rough kind of a thing, just to give you an idea. But I do want to give you an idea of what we're looking out there. So I really like this logo an awful lot. I think it's really cool, really clean. I like the attitude and the pose of everybody. It's just nothing but attitude. It's awesome. And I'm bringing this to come back to the young people because those crazy kids, I have probably, trashed this millennial generation more than anybody I know of, and I keep coming back to the fact it's really not fair. I mean, it's not their fault they were raised so badly and educated so badly. It's our fault. Exactly our fault. It's it's what you get when everybody comes in first, and when parents want to be their kids' friend instead of their parents. Wild Goose is good to see back again. Wild Goose says he wants to be Mr. White. No, Wild, you're Mr. Pink. We've settled this already. Look, I'm not going to go and rename everybody. You're Mr. Pink and you're stuck with it, so just stay with it. Anyway, that website thing looks cool. I'm going to bring up my little mail browser here so I can see this when it comes in, because I'll show you that, and then trying to keep this all in one sort of page here. But it's just really groovy, and it's way overdue. And one of the things that we're going to be doing with the new year is we're bringing in a brand new website. We hope to, if we can get the trained monkeys back on the hamster wheel. We hope to open this new website at midnight on January 1st, 2016, on account of it being an election year. So that's number one. We'll have new content. As I said, we'll have a new members-only show called the Nexus Report, which we ran the trailer for last time. And we're bringing back the firewalls. And it's great, too. We're bringing them back regardless. And, it's funny because I don't know what the total is. I'm just shooting in the dark, and it may be higher than this, but I don't think it's much lower than this. I've probably got 30 million YouTube views, and this thought hasn't occurred to me until very recently. You would think that, a smarter person, this would have occurred to them right away. But 30 million YouTube views on and off over hundreds of videos, I guess, at least that, I would say. And all of them, pretty much all of them, have steered people to other people's businesses. I was a partner in Declaration Entertainment, but Jeremy Boring owned that. Did the original Firewalls. All the afterburners and all of those hits that those got went to PJTV, and certainly grateful for the paychecks they wrote me, which simply wouldn't be doing this without PJTV. There's no question about it. And then finally, when we did the second set of Truth Revolts, we just... hang on a second, I'm looking for this. We did the second set of firewalls for Truth Revolt. So we are going to be bringing them back, and everything is going to be going to one place, and that is BillWhittle.com. Sorry to be distracted here. I've got some things I really would like to load this thing for you. Here it comes. No, I'm still looking for it. I don't see it in. In any event, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to be bringing the firewalls back. I got to concentrate on doing the show because there's nothing worse than me being distracted. It's just appalling. We're going to bring the firewalls back, and everything is going to be directed to BillWhittle.com, Drive Up Membership. And that's, it's actually kind of fine to have this momentous vision, I don't know how many people have seen these videos, but like I said, it's tens of millions at least, and might be nice to drive people to my actual website for a change, just as a business breakthrough that I had with my advanced business brain. But we're going to be able to do them in studio, which means we keep on the news cycle, get them out fast, and that, I think, is going to go a long, long way. So, there's that. I really am looking forward to this. One second. It's worth the wait. So, talking about the kids, God, I hate to. We had such a good open too. There we go. The kids, those nutty kids, those crazy nutty kids, the kids that I saw at Turning Point USA were just some of the best kids ever. They were really smart, And you have to be brave, to be a young conservative and to do it. And they're switched on, and everybody's going to be working for them. So I had some young people programming in mind, and I want to tell you about it because I told them about it, and it's daring. That's what we do the show for, to have fun. So here's the basic pitch. Here and here's like the overview of the pitch. I'm going to keep doing the firewalls because they're effective and they're good for what they do. But I think if it turns out that I am going to try and do videos for millennials, I can't just be the 56-year-old guy standing in front of the in front of the burning lake of fire and rage. So I was trying to think about how I'd put these things together. Now here's the fundamental thing. I think it's true in the country. I completely believe this, and it wasn't true 6 months ago. It may not have been true 3 months ago, but I think political correctness is done. I think the American people are finished with political correctness. Done. I think a lot of young people are finished with political correctness. I think all of this business of this every single thing. Here we go. Every single thing. Actually, I don't need the banner. I need the actual web page. If you got it, I was looking for it earlier and I can't seem to find it. So what I'm going to try and do is I think what I'm trying to say is, as far as political correctness is concerned, I don't think we have to. I don't think we have to convince people. I think we just have to tell them it's okay. To just come out and mock this stuff. And that's what I want to do. I don't want to just mock it. I want to poke my finger in its eye. So batten down the hatches, folks, because it'll take a few minutes. We always do a few minutes before we get into the questions. Here's basically where I'm going with this thing. I want to poke political correctness in the eye. And how do I do this for millennials without looking like, the old dude? And then I realized, well, maybe the way to do it is to just own being the old dude. Hey, there it is. So here's what I'm going to do. But first of all, I'm just going to go ahead and download this thing just so you can see it, because I've been talking about it forever and I just like it so much. So here it comes. We're downloading it now. Where is it? Coming in. Boom. It's a PNG. Come on, baby. I hate this auto kind of thing. There we go. That looks like it might be it. Oh, it was it was on my desktop the whole time. I'm so sorry, Ian. I'm a complete idiot. It just was shrunken down so small I couldn't see it. And then when it did get downloaded, I was able to see that there it was. Here it comes. Hang on. I know it's a lot of effort, but basically, in a nutshell, again, just as a rough, this is what we think we're going to be looking at, something a lot more modern. So. It's going to be just real big picture-driven kind of things, just like the rest of these stories. And we're going to have a big the thing on the lead's going to be up at the front there, and then we'll have the channel breakdown on the pull-down menu. We'll have what Ian called the hot zone, which I like very much, which is the latest stories. And then eventually we'll have this pull-down menu, which you can see in the upper left-hand corner there, and that's going to be where all the channels are, because right now the website's losing a lot of real estate to the channel things and all that other stuff. So it's just going to be big and bold. And if you look at where the big top thing is, again, Ian just did this in 10 minutes. He just knocked it out. And this isn't the work he's done since then. This is what got me saying, yes, let's do it. So if you see the big block in the center where it says, can we finally call this Islamic terrorism now? That's actually going to be moving video. And it's going to be moving video of the pitch video for the membership thing. And the pitch video for the membership thing is actually really, really cool. I'll probably come back to this picture. I'll come back to the studio. But again, if you see that big block in the top there, that's going to be animated video, and it's going to be full screen. It's going to be really big. And then the latest stories will be behind that. So I'll come back to the image and I'll tell you about that. Then I'll tell you why I'm telling you all this stuff. So I found these awesome, fantastic, After Effects templates, like the Christmas thing that you saw, the Halloween thing that we did. So there's one of them that's really striking. and it's a series of pieces of glass, and you can map the video directly onto the glass. Thanks again, Ian. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I was so scattered about it. I had a feeling it was on the desktop. There is. Anyway, this thing's got it's got these animated pieces of glass that it's called shattered, and it's just shattered glass, and you can not only map pictures onto that, you can map video onto the glass. And so what it's going to do basically is it's going to have a picture of like the American flag, and it's going to kind of fade to kind of a corroded version, and it's just going to crack, and the little pieces are going to come apart. The music's going to be real ominous, and it's going to be, America's in trouble. The wheels are coming off. The Western civilization just kind of dun. And it's gorgeous. It's three-dimensional. It's just fantastic. It's beautiful. Just nothing but things cracking and breaking. And then somewhere in there, one of the cards is going to say, "But we can change that." And then it's going to stop, and the music's going to get a little more upbeat, a little more, fanfare for the common man kind of thing. I'm going to run this thing in reverse then, and then all these glass pieces are going to kind of come together, and everything that was shattered is going to appear whole again, and it's going to say, we can do it. We can tell a better story. We can save the country. We need your help. And so that animated thing is going to be it's just so beautiful. I mean, really, when you see it, you're going to die. I wish I could take credit for it, but it's spectacular. And that'll be animated on the front page of the BillWhittle.com website, so it's going to be a knockout. And I just can't thank Ian enough and his partner Eric, who've been doing just yeoman work on this and working like slaves around the clock trying to make this deadline, and I think we'll probably do it. So I've got a lot to do. Anyway, the new website, new content, and new content for millennials. So back to where I was just a moment ago now that I finally got this done. I said I want to poke political correctness in the eye, and my problem is, how do I talk to young people without being a 56-year-old, soon-to-be 57-year-old guy talking to young people? And I realized that rather than me standing in front of a screen, I need to do something that's much more accessible and much different. So hang on, buckle in here, because I've got the technology. We have the technology. We can make him better than he was. So I'm actually going to own the fact that I'm older than these people, lecturing them, because that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. So, for example, I was going to do Common Sense Resistance is Not Dead, ATS 508. We'll get to that. I was going to do a firewall about Uber, because I think if the Republicans have any sense, which means it won't happen, so we're going to have to make it happen, this should be an Uber election. It should be exclusively about Uber. Because Uber is what we believe in. You've got a car, I need a ride, here's your money, off we go. Why do we have to add $8 fee to be sent into the state government? Why do we have to build in a delay? There's some people, taxi unions were actually saying that they wanted Uber to have a 5-minute delay built into the Uber software, so that, because they said, taxi said, I can't compete. We can't compete with Uber, precisely. So I was going to stand up and do a firewall about Uber. Now, for the young people, here's what I'm going to do. This is going to take a little explaining. Stay with me. I'm going to have, we're going to shoot it like a movie just out on the street. Just going to have a regular street corner, maybe outside of Starbucks or something, and Uber car is going to pull up, and these two young women, two millennials, and one of them's wearing a Feel the Burn button, and the other one's got a I'm Ready for Hillary t-shirt on, are going to get in the car, and just as they're getting into the car, I'm going to appear with my hair slicked down. I'm going to look as much like Don Draper as I possibly can. I don't pretend to be as good looking as this guy, but you get the idea. I'm going to be wearing the thin lapels and the real thin tie, and I'm going to appear kind of like the Star Wars hologram, except that it's either going to be black and white scanline TV, but I think what I'm going to do is have it be scanline TV from really early color TV, like 1964, 65, with those kind of oversaturated colors, and it's going to look exactly like a TV image. And I'm not going to be looking like this at all. I'll darken the hair up. It'll be a rinse. Please don't panic. I accidentally had somebody do the color once, and they went 17 shades too dark, and we all laughed, and everybody laughed, and I cried. But basically, and it's going to be slicked back, and I'm going to be dressed in like 1964 suit, America at the height of its powers, that real space age kind of thing. And as these two kids are getting into the car, I'm just going to, this image, this TV image, translucent image, be able to see through me. It's going to appear on the street, and I'm going to have a highball in one hand, I'm going to have a cigarette in the other, and I'm going to basically say, hey, you understand that Bernie and Hillary both hate Uber, right? And I want these kids to roll their eyes like, oh, not this guy again, you know? It's like, really? Yeah, really. Why do they hate it? You're nuts. I said, well, the short form is because Bernie's a communist and she's a corrupt felon. But the long form is both Hillary and Bernie hate Uber because both of their campaigns in this giant government-run thing that you all love so much that you're getting ready to vote for, I can tell from your sloppy clothing, they hate it. And the reason they hate it is because they don't get a piece of it. See, we Republicans think that if you've got a car and I've got some money, this should be a pretty simple transaction. We don't know why we'd have to add $10 to the fare and send it into Washington or Sacramento, and we don't know why we'd have to build in a delay. But Hillary and Bernie both want to do these things because their big union supporters who make their campaigns run have them in their pocket. That's what the big donors do. The big donors do that. And so I just wanted you to know that while we Republicans think Uber's awesome, Hillary and or Bernie will do their very, very best to regulate it and make it more expensive and slower because otherwise they don't get a piece out of it. And frankly, this is how we think the entire economy ought to run as free market Republicans. We think the whole thing ought to be peer-to-peer. You got a car? I need a ride? Fantastic. You've got a saw? I need an extension put on the back of my house? Great. Let's get it done. And basically this thing will be no longer than 90 seconds. Somebody asked, am I going to be wearing a fedora? No, fedora's more of the 40s, and anybody who's wearing a fedora who's not in a movie these days is in the same league with people smoking cigars and steel rim glasses and bow ties. It's an affectation. I don't know. I had affectations for a long time. So I just want to come in here and just kind of, somebody just said Bill ruins everything. I kind of think that's kind of what I want to do. I think I kind of want to come in and just ruin their day and just poke them in the eye. And so then they'll just disappear. Now though, now we get to the fun stuff. And I think in order to do this, I'm going to have to just break the rule I just said I wouldn't break, but this one I can do pretty fast because I have a friend whose radio show I just did. And you really need to see this. You need to see these images because I would be doing you a gross disservice if I didn't show you this picture, which I'm about to show you right now. This is an actual friend of mine, believe it or not. Can we just not do this? Do we have to? I don't want your damn wallpapers. I just want the picture. We'll find a better one. Let's see. Come on now. I am downloading a picture of my that'll work. Yeah, perfect. Here it comes. Okay, so we're still with me, right? We're still with me on this stuff for millennials, on this marketing for millennials. So I told you a little bit about what the Uber thing would look like, but I was saying I wanted to poke political correctness in the eye, and I am going to poke it in the eye, and I'll tell you how I'm going to poke it in the eye, because this is where it gets to be really fun. So back to where we were. Here we go. Okay, so that's one of the videos. I just appear, tell them about Uber, why Hillary and Bernie hate it, and then I go. And by the way, I'll be holding a cigarette and a highball, and one of these kids may say to me, smoking's bad for you, and I'll say, yeah, I know it. That's why it's not lit. Well, if it's not lit, then why do you have it? Because I'm a free person, and you don't get to tell me what to do with my own body. That's why. See, poke them. We got to poke them. We got to mock them. We got to make them realize how pathetic this is. So here's the one. You want to talk about stepping on the third rail? I hear from these young people how these boys are constantly just demeaned. That boys in these schools, in high schools and colleges, every one of them is a potential rapist, and they have to take rape prevention classes, and they're basically defective girls, and why don't they share more, and why don't they talk about their feelings? But they've been utterly, this entire generation, this is the generation, look, you think about the number of votes here, half of the population under the age of 25, the males, obviously, have been so brutalized by this political correctness. They've been so brutalized and so beaten up. Our friend Eisenfire told me a story about that. He said he almost had to find the Stratosphere Lounge before he realized that he wasn't actually, a potential rapist, that there were other people who were just like him, were good, decent, normal people, and that this whole thing had been basically punched down on them. So I mean to mock it, and I mean to mock it hard, and I know it's going to get a lot of grief, and that's what I want. I want the grief. So here we go. So I want to do another one, and this is why I want to work with the young people, because I can't write this. I need to hear the actual language. They'll tell me. But I want to have a classroom, college classroom, and I want to have a feminist teacher, and she's going to be when you picture feminist college teacher, 24 years old or 28 or whatever, when you think just think of what your image of the Oberlin College feminist teacher looks like, and that's who we're going to cast. And she's going to be in this room, and she's going to be making the kind of comments that we hear. It's male privilege and rape culture, and she's just basically demeaning these guys. And these young men are just looking down. They're just looking down at their shoes because they believe it. They've been told this their whole lives. And then I'm just going to scan myself in. I'm just going to appear. I'm just going to be, 63 guy there, and I'm going to have the drink and the cigarette. And in the middle of this, she's going to look over, and she's never seen me before. And I'm just going to look at her. I'm going to say, sweetheart, you either need a big stiff drink or you need 20 years of psychotherapy because you got some serious daddy issues you need to work out. What did you call me? Oh, you heard me, baby. I'm pretty sure you heard me. I find those kind of comments disrespectful, offensive, and demeaning. I'm glad you find them disrespectful, offensive, and demeaning because they're intended to be disrespectful, offensive, and demeaning. What you're telling these young men is disrespectful, offensive, and demeaning, and they don't get to leave. They have to sit and listen to this crap from you all the time. I think it sucks. Well, I won't say sucks. I have to find some term from there. And then we're going to get in this whole thing, And he's going to say, I suppose you think women should be just, your slaves that work in the kitchen. And then I think I can recruit my friend Kelly Carlson, who was on Nip Tuck. Hang on to your... She's married to a SEAL, so let's just keep that in mind. But and she doesn't know about this yet. So please, if you see her on the street, please don't tell her. Here's my friend Kelly. Kelly Carlson is a real good friend of mine, and she's married to an actual Navy SEAL. And then she's going to scan in, and she's going to be dressed in 1964 clothes, and she's going to look like she's going to look a little bit like Jackie, and she's going to scan in right next to me, and I'm just going to turn to her and say, do I treat you like a slave and a servant, darling? And she's going to say, no. Are you kidding me? And look, I'm spitballing it, right? But the feminist teacher will say, well, how do you know he's not a rapist? And she's going to say, because I don't date rapists. And then we'll just look at each other like, what kind of question is that? And then so I'm just going to run this kind of thing. Like I said, I'm just going to kind of spitball it a little bit. And she'll say, because I don't date rapists. And then she's going to look at me and says, he's a perfect gentleman most of the time. And I'm going to turn to her and I'm just going to say, you are a bad little girl, and you're going to get your reward a little later. And then we're just going to talk, and it's going to be like, she's going to, the feminism teacher is going to ask another one of these horrible questions about, fish needs a bicycle kind of thing. And Kelly's going to say, I worship this guy. He works his tail off for me. He just works for me all the time. He does everything he can to make my life as easy as possible. And he gets the door for me, and he gets my chair for me. And when we walk down the street, he's always on the traffic side of where I am. And then I'll say something like, somebody splashes mud on her, it'll hit me instead of her. And, if a car jumps the curb, it hits me, and I get something soft to land on. And it's just going to be this kind of old school relationship. It's just going to be this kind of man and woman kind of thing where they're just crazy about each other, and it's just going to be sexy, and it's going to be cool, and it's going to just let these kids know that this crap that's been shoved down their throat forever is just junk. We're just going to mock it. We're just going to laugh at it. We're just going to look like, seriously, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Oh, men are pigs. He can be a pig sometimes, but, I like that. Just play with it. And when you get somebody who looks like Kelly does, giving not just the boys permission, but giving the girls permission to be, to be women. It's like, so does he keep you in the kitchen? No, I'm a doctor, for God's sakes. He works his tail off for me. I adore him. I worship him. What's going to happen? So anyway, the thing about spitballing ideas is, you just kind of run to the mouth, but the bottom line is tight. 90 seconds, 2 minutes tops. And I'm just going to keep doing those things. So, I'm going to poke it in the eye. Final one I was thinking about is, it's the third rail. This one is going to take a little bit of courage too. But what I was thinking about doing is having a situation somewhere where there's a black guy in a hoodie, and he's using the language, and I think these need to be uncensored, and I'm going to make this appearance, and he's going to make some kind of comment. I'm going to let that comment kind of roll off my back and say, there's somebody here you really should meet. And then I'm going to have a guy who looks exactly like Booker T. Washington, and he's going to appear. And this time, I'm going to be looking like 1963 television, but the Booker T. Washington guy is going to look like Edison film, like the first film ever shot, real jumpy and real scratchy, and like it's really, really old film. He's going to be kind of this hologram thing too. And I'm going to say, hey man, this is somebody you really need to know about. This is Booker T. Washington, and he's got a few words to say for you. And I want this kid to come out and say, hey, listen, man, I don't need to listen to anything that this house nigger has to say. And then I'm going to say, you use that word on this man one more time, I'm going to smack your freaking face off, because I'm going to get mad. And then Booker T. Washington is going to say, no, it's okay. Been dealing with this forever. And I'm going to calm down a little bit, and I'm going to say, let me tell you something about this guy. Okay, this is one of the greatest Americans who ever lived, and he had the Tuskegee Institute. And back about 100 years ago, he got in a big debate with a guy named W.E.B. Du Bois, and Booker T. Washington said, hey, if we're going to enter the society as equals, we got to come in as equals. We need to go back and work on the farms, maybe the same farms we were slaves on, so that we can make our own money and start our own businesses. And that way, our children will be mechanics, and their children will be doctors. And we don't have to beg for respect. We're going to earn it. And we're just going to come in that way. And then I'm going to say, and Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute had a higher test score average than the white national average, and they had higher legitimacy rate. The pilot school they had, the Tuskegee Airmen, never lost a bomber. And I'm going to say to this kid, if we listen to him instead of W.E.B. Du Bois, who said, give us all the money and the power here to us, the talented 10th. That was what he actually said, the talented 10th, who are the only 10% are the only ones who are capable of understanding, the white man's ways. And W.E.B. Du Bois basically said, give us the money, give us the power, and we'll distribute it down to the rest of the black population. Well, that was the decision we made. And that's how we have a Jesse Jackson and an Al Sharpton and a Barack Obama, for that matter. But we made a pretty big mistake back there. And if we hadn't made a mistake back there, let me just tell you what this world might look like. If you'd listened to Booker T. Washington instead of W.E.B. Du Bois, things would have been different. And this kid who's got nothing but attitude, nothing but rage and hatred's got the hoodie's got the whole look. Suddenly this guy's going to be dressed in a very, 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 very cool. He's going to be dressed in a very, very cool little kind of a casual kind of suit. And his language is going to change and his posture is going to change. And I'm going to say, you wouldn't be some guy out on the street with nothing to do. You'd be an electrical engineer or something like that. And then the guy's language is going to be improved, and he's going to be erudite. So if we listen to this guy, if we listen to Booker T. Washington, people would go up to black people on the street and they'd ask him for advice. If we'd listen to him, they'd be like a priesthood, and we'd go up to black people and say, can you translate this Latin phrase for me, or can you give me some advice on how to be wise with investments, or I'm really worried about my daughter. What can I do to get her back on the straight and narrow? And this kid is going to be happy, and he's going to be successful, and it's going to be his world, and he's going to understand. He's going to look around. He's going to realize, oh my God, Now listen, these are just concept ideas. It's all going to be in the script. It's all going to be in the writing. It's got to be written well. It's got to be acted perfectly. But this is the kind of thing that I think will really make a difference, and I'm going to try it. And obviously I'm going to get a lot of heat over it. I don't care about the heat because when I say it's if you say to a feminist, listen, sweetheart, you're just going there. that's where you're going. And that's what they need, and that's what they deserve. They don't deserve anything better than that, frankly. They don't deserve a particle more than that. They're awful, mean-spirited fascists, and there's not one of them has any fun in them whatsoever. And kind of where we're going with this whole thing is, with this whole kind of attitude, it's kind of like, why are you such a douche? Why? What is so awful about your life that you have to make everybody else's life awful either? Why don't you let these people alone and make some money and have some fun, or not? Whichever they want. And I just kind of want to get there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, in order for me to get the message across, I have to put myself in this kind of ironic box. And literally, I'm putting myself in a little ironic box. Plus, it's got some visual candy, some eye candy to look at, and that helps. And the ironic box is, yes, I'm lecturing you. But I'm not lecturing you as just some guy. I'm lecturing you, and what we're really going to reveal eventually is, look, kid, I'm not your dad. I'm your dad's dad. I screwed up with your dad, and that's why your dad screwed you up so much. But back in our day, we had a lot of fun, and we did what we damn well wanted to. And I bet you're a little sick of it, aren't you? Aren't you a little sick being called a rapist? Aren't you a little sick of being called a defective girl? Don't you kind of just wish you could just be a man and have the women really love you for it? Because, frankly, that's what they want. We all know it's true. And just kind of swing with it, go for it. And I just want to do it. I'm going to do it. So there we are. That's that. We're going to do it. We're going to put it on the new website, and we're going to drive membership numbers as high as we possibly can, because we're going to put out firewalls, and we're going to put some advertising money behind it. And Cheryl told me, who we love very much, says, okay, give it a chance, but she'll give it a chance, but be careful. I don't want to be careful. I think we've had enough trouble being careful. I don't want to be careful. I want to be audacious. I want to be bold. I want to really, really hit them where they live, because they've gotten away with it by us kind of, I don't know if we really want to touch the black thing. I don't know if we really want to touch the feminism thing. I don't know if we're going to lose voters if we... No. Hit them back. It's worth a try. I say hit them back. Hit them back. Hard. I'm tired of being mocked. And I'm tired of conservatives being the squares. And I'm tired of the conservatives being the ones that are uptight. We're not the uptight ones. We're the ones who believe in, I've said it 100 times, loud guns, fast cars, and hot women. And I'm tired of them owning the cool. They're not cool. They're control freaks. They're weenies. They're just a bunch of jerks. They're control freak jerks. Kiss my shiny metal ass, as Bender would say. So that's that. And now to the questions. Yes, we got a lot coming up. All right, so here we go. From Russ Johansson, he says, "I wish I may." This is the episode where we have things that you wish were true but probably aren't. Russ Johansson, "I wish I may. I wish I might have peace on earth tonight." And he goes on to elaborate. "I'd like this to be a serious question. What would a practical state of peace on earth look like? And is there a practical, though highly improbable, way of getting there? I know this could be the entire 3-hour show. Feel free to tangent off, like we could stop you." Yeah, but I'm wondering about the Bill Whittle version of that vision. Remember, I'm looking for practical, even if it's improbable. It's a funny thing, Russ. We really, a subset of humanity does have peace on earth, and we've had it for hundreds of years. And that subset is democracies in Western countries. I remember being stunned. I can't think of an exception to this rule, but stunning to realize that no democracy has ever declared war on another democracy. It's never happened, ever. So I once read something. I didn't coin this phrase. I wish I had. I think the statement was, "Peace is the absence of the resistance to capitalism." Yeah. I know it sounds like, gee, that's what your team thinks, but it's really true, Now, can it be achieved? Well, it has been achieved. We're not at war with Germany. And when we have quarrels with England, now we were at war with England, but they weren't a democracy, a republic democracy. We don't go to war with France because the people won't accept it. We go to war with dictatorships or communists, or they go to war with us, as has been the case throughout all of the 20th century. But the problem is there are some people out there who just don't want to get with the program. And now we get down to the actual the actual nub of it. I don't know whether I know the reason civilizations fall, and I know it's a biological reason, and that makes it extremely difficult to turn around. But I also know that this is the first time that regular people are able to talk to each other, and there's that. And so let's just assume for a minute that we can, because I think people really are at the end of their ropes. I really do feel like there's a big recoil coming out there. So the question is not is there an imaginary world where there's peace on earth? Because frankly, look, we worry about China militarily, but now our economies are so deeply intertwined, it's hard to imagine if we bombed China or if China bombed us, whether we'd be hitting their plants or they'd be hitting ours. So it's capitalism. And that word I found was apparently coined by Marx. It's really just free trade, right? It's the voluntary trading of things that you want for the things that you have. And so even people who we would consider to be like an arch foe, and they are an arch foe politically, it's hard to imagine a shooting. I can't imagine it, but it's hard to imagine a shooting war with China because there's so much to lose. And the economies are so intertwined, and the people too. So I think if we could just get out there and make a case for this civilization of ours, then I think we would have essentially peace. Look, America's been essentially at peace for 50, 60 years, and so is Britain, and so is France. We've been at peace since the end of World War II, when we extinguished these socialist dictatorships. I think teaching history would be a handy part of this equation. If we taught a little history, we might be able to get a little bit of mileage out of it. But ultimately, I've been developing this idea a lot more lately with regard to Islam, because that's the real problem. And as I've been saying, look, let's just assume that you're a moderate Muslim, and on one hand you've got these murdering jihadis who are telling you that the West has a death wish, that we are going to take over everything, that we're going to get all their stuff, and that if you protest against us, we'll kill you because we are in fact following the Quran as it's written. That's all true. Let's say you're a moderate Muslim and you see this, and you live in one of these neighborhoods in France, and you see the French police go into one of these banlieues, one of these Islamic ghettos, to arrest somebody for rape. And instead of seeing the perp being walked out to the car in shame and humiliation, you see 60 youths throwing rocks at the police running away at top speed, and then police cars being smashed with rocks and everybody screaming Allahu Akbar, and the police go hauling out of there, and they don't come back with tanks. What does that tell you if you're a moderate? Forget about the encouragement it gives to the extremists. What does it tell you if you're a moderate? Well, this is the point I'm trying to make, right? The reason that these jihadis are getting the traction they're getting, and the reason that Western kids go to Syria, which sucks, the place sucks, the whole Middle East sucks, the reason people go there and fight for ISIS is because people want something to believe in. People are wired to fight for things, and some people want to believe in something so much they're ready to go die for it, for the adventure of it, the romance, the commitment, all of that stuff. And if there's nobody telling the story of France, and nobody's telling the story of Sweden, and if all the Swedes are doing is saying, please take over our culture, and if there's any way we can help you, let us know. This business about our women wearing miniskirts is obviously an indication that it's okay to rape them, and we're fine with that, because that's essentially what Sweden's doing. Well, then what do you expect the moderates to do? And don't you see how the moderates get radicalized the same way that the German citizens got radicalized by the Nazis? No, never more than 7% of the German population were members of the National Socialist Party, but they radicalized the whole country. Prior to assuming power in 1933 in January, when Hitler was made chancellor, the Nazis never got above 50% of the vote. I think their highest ever was 48%, but they didn't have a clear majority in the Reichstag. But after Hitler became chancellor, they had a plebiscite just a few years afterwards, and they got 98.5% of the vote because they'd radicalized the middle, that no one was pushing back. And that's what we need to do. So, yes, I do think we could have peace on earth. Somebody needs to make a strong case for free markets, and the purveyor of the free markets and the kind of country that really invented the free market, and that's us. And that's why we need your membership, because we can tell that story better than anybody else can. Cheryl Twomey, hey, look at that. My question is then, can you think of a definitive fork in your road when you zigged instead of zagged? What's the alternate Bill doing now? What kind of life is he living? That's a pretty cool question, and awful, both. I've told the story about losing the vision and wanting to be a fighter pilot 100 years. 100 times rather. Many times in the last 35 or 40 years, I've thought, oh, if I hadn't had the vision, I would have been flying jets for the Air Force. I'd be a retired military guy by now, or maybe I'd probably be. Actually, who am I kidding? I wouldn't be a retired military guy. I'd be the chief of staff of the Air Force. But many times I've come to realize actually that I'm probably not temperamentally suited for the military. I would have been good at it, I think, but it's not my true calling. So there's a world, I guess, where if my vision had gotten bad a year later, once I was in, and once they had money in me in terms of my flight training, that whole first future could have happened. There's a whole world where, look, I've been trying to make movies for my entire life, and as I've told you many times before too, back in 2000, I just driving home as a film editor, and I said, man, you're a guy with a great future behind you. I just missed the boat. So there's a world where I didn't go to my dad's funeral, or my dad didn't decide to be interred at Arlington, and I never had that experience. I never started eject, and I'd be an unknown editor working in show business. There's a world where I could have tried harder at the financing and had a little more confidence in terms of the raising the money, in which case I might be a successful filmmaker by now. I think that's going to happen to me next year, because one thing I found out about raising money is that credibility is everything. It's not how smart your plan is. It's not how good your idea is. It's credibility. Do people trust you? Millionaires and people with $1 billion don't just give away $1 million. That's why they're billionaires. They're billionaires because they expect to make money, and when they're about to write a large check, they want to have some sense that the person's got some credibility. And so I think my film director future, no one's seen it yet, and I know it's bragging until you prove it. But I've run this big bat story so many times, and it's such a damn clever idea, and I've got the whole thing in my head. My hope is that as we do this political battle in 2016, and I don't know what inauguration day is, let's say it's January 20th, and whoever's inaugurated on January 20th, I want to start shooting on January 21st. So start getting the money up for this, but I still have a lot left to prove, and I think I'm going to surprise people. I won't surprise you guys, bless your hearts, but I think I'm going to surprise a lot of people, because I think I can tell some really great stories in a way that, still have a great political message, but nobody knows they're getting it. So there's that. And listen, not to put too fine a point on it, there's a couple of alternative futures where I'm speaking metaphorically now, but I'm under a bridge with a needle in my arm someplace. I've never, ever had a problem with drugs or alcohol, probably because I was too scared of it. But there's a world where, I just gave up. And I don't know. Maybe I'm a manager at Walmart or something. I find that hard to believe. The internet, to say I'm here because of the internet is self-evident. You're watching me on the internet. But this is the great thing about the internet. And it is an infinitely large, infinitely level playing field where talent will out if you have the persistence to stick with it. It was 4 million blogs started in 2003, and who got out of there? Instapundit was already established. Eject made it. Vodka Pundit made it. Scrappleface made it. I work with these two guys every day, or every week anyway. Steve Green and Scott Ott. Rachel Lucas, we miss terribly. Stephen Den Best, I think, is the greatest mind that's not on the board right now. I miss him so very badly. But basically, there were just a handful of blogs that made it, and I made it because I could write. And once I found what I really wanted to write about, once I found something I had to say. So even though I said there's a world maybe where I end up under a bridge with a needle in my arm, that world would have to be a world where there was no internet, because I think sooner or later I would have discovered the power of when I say the internet is free, it means you don't have to have any money to get in the game. And as somebody who dealt with the disappointment of the Air Force thing by going out and making Super 8 movies, there was a group of 6 of us, and we spent every penny we had combined on getting film processed and getting and buying new film loads in little 3-minute cartridges so we could shoot our Super 8 movies. In a world where a digital camera costs $300-400, I think my storytelling skills would have come out one way or another. And I never thought I'd be into politics, but because I just did this afterburner on the moon. I think the reason I bring up the afterburner about the moon is not because I would have been an astronomy educator, but I had been an astronomy educator, and I guess I'm beginning to realize that's actually what I do best. I can take complex things and make them simple in a way that people understand and make them care about it because I care about it. So I think that probably would have happened one way or another, and I'm very, very grateful that it happened the way it did. I was real conflicted, and somebody said, is the common sense resistance dead? Is Aurora dead? Is Big Bad Problems dead? They're not dead. And what took me 2 years of torment to realize was I couldn't do them both at the same time. I thought I could, but I couldn't. And finally, somewhere back in the summer, it's been a miserable year for me, perfectly honestly. It's been a miserable year. But somewhere in the middle of the summer, I just said, look, man, you've got one big election year coming up, and you're going to focus nothing but the political message, and you're going to go full tilt boogie in a way you never have before. You're going to send links. You're going to get on the Rush Limbaugh show. You're going to get on Hannity. You're going to get on Fox. You're going to get on. Just going to do all this stuff, and you're going to promote this stuff, and you're going to get in there, and you're going to do your job, messaging wise, and hopefully you'll do some new kinds of messaging. And then when this election year is over, and that new person, whoever it is sworn in, then I am switching, I can't say all of my energies, but then I'm going to concentrate on the movies. I'm going to pull every trigger I've got. I'm going to pull every string I've got, and I'm going to try and get these movies made. And people say, are you going to leave us? No, we're not leaving. We're not going to stop ever doing the Stratosphere Lounge. We're not ever going to stop doing the membership stuff. But I think the way to think of it is I'll go from active duty into the reserves as far as the political messaging goes, and get to the real political messaging, which is movies where people get a message they don't even know they're getting. Moving on. Bob Neef asks, can you try to reconcile the leftist feminist mindset with their apparent love for Islamic culture? They seem diametrically opposed to me. I'm going to put this in the form of a question because I said I was only taking questions on the format. I'm going to go and basically say it seems... I wish it were true that the left didn't get in bed with the Islamicists, but it seems like they do. And they do. And the reason that the left is in bed with the Islamicists is because the left consists of cowards, moral cowards. They consist of people who are physically frightened of everything. That's why they don't like guns. And by the way, the other reason they don't like guns is because, number one, they're afraid of them, but what they're really afraid of is themselves. I came to this realization fairly recently. When you hear a liberal talking about, well, if there's a gun in the house, I'm leaving, what's he really worried about? I hear this all the time. If there's a gun on the table, I actually heard a college professor who was doing he's a math professor, so naturally enough, he's lecturing his class on gun control, and he basically said he said it out loud. What I've always thought was true. He said, having a gun in the house, we don't know when we could just go off and snap. I said, that's it. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust their own impulse control. That's why they're progressives, actually, because progressives just want to do everything that's convenient to them. It's not liberty, and it's not libertarianism. It's libertinism. They want to be able to do whatever they want to all the time without any consequences. They want to have whatever sex they want to. They want to do whatever drugs they want to. They want to do whatever they're all in favor of free speech as long as it's what they agree with. If it's not what they agree with, they want it shut down. They have no principles, no morals. It's all about themselves. It's all about themselves all the time. And they're physical cowards, which is why when you tell them ISIS is coming to kill us, they tell you to shut up, and they say no. These are lovely, kind people. I work with one of them every day. I don't doubt that whatsoever. I'm sure you work with lovely, kind Muslims every day. Many of us do. That's not what we're talking about. And so when you say no, they're coming, and they're serious, they don't want to hear it, because that would mean they'd have to prepare themselves for the worst, which is why they blame the guns, right? They blame the guns because they can ban a gun. They can't ban madness. They can't ban murder. No one's ever done that before. They know it's true. They fetishize the object, and they say if we could just get rid of the object, we'd get rid of the crime. We'd get rid of the murder. We'd get rid of the rape. We'd get rid of Islam. We'd get rid of ISIS. We'd get rid of all these things if we could just get rid of the guns. And as anybody with a brain knows, that just means that they'd come at us with rocks and knives and swords. And the greatest moment in the history of cinema, without question, in my mind, the greatest single moment in the history of cinema is when Indiana Jones is faced with that guy with the sword in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he's doing the And he's showing us that this guy, this Arab with the beard, has trained as a warrior his entire life. He's trained as a warrior in swordsmanship since he was 3. Now he's 30. Now he's the greatest swordsman in all of the Middle East. And Indiana Jones is an archaeologist and a college professor, but he has the thunderstick, and that is the great leveler. And he turns away because it was a nuisance. It was a nuisance. The greatest threat that they could put up was it was inconvenient to him. That instant where he pulls his pistol out, shoots the guy, and the look on Indiana Jones's face, which is not a look of remorse, it's not a look of panic, it's not a look of fear, but it's a look of, I don't have time for this. It's the greatest moment in cinema. Did I say cinema? Bad, Bill. It's the greatest moment in the history of movies. So, I'm getting to the Islam thing. So, the idea that if you ban guns means you're going to ban violence is just exactly the opposite. If you ban guns, it means the people that don't practice violence all the time will have no chance whatsoever. 100-pound school teacher has no chance against 5 guys if it's all about fists. But if she's got a gun, she's got a chance. And so there you go. So the reason that the liberals are defending Islam is twofold. Number one, they're afraid of Islam, and they want it known that they're on their side because they think that if they make it clear that we're on their side, then Islam won't hurt them. They're unwilling to face the fact that the thing that Islam hates about the West is liberalism. If you want to really get down to what Islam hates about the West, it's liberalism. It's our treating women like equals, and it's allowing homosexuals to walk the streets, and it's all the rest of these things that they find terrifying and scary. These guys are terrified of women. That's something you need to know, by the way. They're terrified of women. They're terrified of the whole idea of women. There's a pretty solid rumor going around that they're in mortal terror of being killed by women because they don't get to go to paradise if they're killed by a girl. So the idea that there are female Apache helicopter pilots out there kicking their asses and blow them into tiny little chunks is awesome. It really deters some of them because they've been afraid of women their entire lives. So you have this kind of weird sort of alignment where the liberals are saying, no, we love Islam. We think Islam is great. Let's all bow down and grant Islam all. That's what's happening in Sweden. They're just basically saying, please don't kill us. We'll give you whatever you want. How often have you heard this from cowards? This is what cowards do. This is cowardice in a nutshell, as a matter of fact, right? In a nutshell, that's cowardism. Please don't hurt me. I'll do whatever you want. Really? Yeah. Give me all your money. Okay. Give me your daughter. Okay. Get on the ground. Yes, sir. So they're not prepared to defend themselves. They don't have the psychic strength for the entire idea of defending themselves. It just terrifies them. So they will submit. That's what Islam means, is submission. So they don't particularly have a problem with submission. Now, obviously, needless to say, I'm not saying that these feminists and these gay supporters that are progressives think that that's what they're going to get. It's just that they refuse to see the threat because they're so afraid of the threat, and they therefore take all of their anxiety and fear out on the one threat that they can see, but that they're not afraid of, and that's us. They know that they can criticize Christians. They know they can criticize conservatives. Nobody's going to lop their heads off. So they take all their rage and anger and terror out on us and all their fear out on us. And they basically say, see, if it weren't for you conservatives, these guys wouldn't be mad at us. But that's not what they say. That's not what the Islamists say. The Islamists say, no, we hate the feminists. We hate the gays. We hate the liberals. We hate the drunks. We hate the gamblers. And we'll kill them all. As for these Bible-believing men who fight, we respect them, and we will allow them to live as dhimmis, paying a tax and without full citizenship rights, but they're people of the book, and we respect them. That's what they say to each other because that's what they believe. So the other part of this equation is, look, if you're a leftist and you're a leftist intellectual, I coined a term today. See if I can remember it. I should have tweeted it. At least I'll put it down now as a marker. I was in the gym. I was getting changed. What was the term? A little expression was I think I said intellectualism is what results when you overeducate somebody who's not very bright to begin with. I think that's about as pithy as I can get it. Intellectualism is what results when you overeducate somebody that's not very bright to begin with. So when you're dealing with leftist intellectuals in this country, they don't want to fight. So Islam is their muscle. In other words, if Islam can destroy capitalism, and since we're so much smarter than everybody, being a leftist, then we'll let Islam basically destroy capitalism and conservatives, and then we'll tell them we're on their side, and we'll shake hands, and they'll go home, and we'll go home, and everything will be, copacetic. When people talk about compromise, when they say we just get together and talk with these people, when they talk about compromise, they always seem to think that the compromise means that they're going to enlighten these Islamic savages and convince them that no, women should have all equal rights, and gays are actually swell people. They actually believe this. That's the end game for them. Let the Islamists take out our warriors, us, and then, then they'll explain to them how they've been on their side the whole time. See, now we can just shake hands and go home. That ain't how it's going to end up. So that's the dual dichotomy. They don't want to face them, so they're afraid of them, so they defend them to say, hey, look, we're on your side. See, it's Stockholm Syndrome. That's what a hostage does. That's what a hostage does. Oh, no. We think you're great. What is going on? I think something's coming through the walls here. And then the other part of it is they know that they're fighters, and that as fighters, they can take out our fighters. But the progressives and the Islamists got another thing coming, because it's real easy to go marching through the streets of Stockholm, and it's real easy to go marching through Paris, and it's real easy to do all these other things, but we're not going to put up with that here. It's not going to happen in Des Moines, and it's not going to happen in... I don't think it's going to happen in South Central, to be honest with you. So, anyway, so much for that. Paul Sullivan asks, I got two questions here. I want to believe millennials are a libertarian generation waiting for a dose of reality to become more conservative, but I just don't know. The recent displays of stupidity from social justice warriors on many campuses and the fact that the overwhelming number of students are Sanders supporters worries me. And I try to group these questions together so that I don't think people feel like I took one question and didn't get the other person credit. So along very similar lines, John Chester says, I wish that a useless millennial that is completely dependent on their parents but is also a strong conservative and avid fan of liberty wasn't a worthless millennial. So I talked about programming for millennials, and I got a little off the track with these guys I met over at Turning Point USA. Look, let me say this about, you've heard me bash millennials here, and they deserve bashing, most of them. Really, their parents deserve it. Let me say three things about millennials. First of all, they're not all social justice warriors. I think I heard earlier today that it's about 40% of them call themselves conservatives or libertarians. So that's half, and that's an important half, because that's not just 40% of the population. That's the 40% that has withstood this ongoing perpetual barrage from the left their entire lives. So that 40% is a particularly fit 40% as far as their mental strictness is concerned, their mental rigor. If you're still believing that you're a conservative or a libertarian after 20 years of indoctrination from the left, that's a 40%. That's a tough-minded 40%. Second thing I'll say about millennials is, our armed forces consist mostly of people who fit into that generation. And the people we're putting in the field right now are tremendous warriors. Now, that has changed somewhat lately, and it has gotten a little significantly less warrior-esque in the military, but it's not really their fault. It's the fault coming down from above. So, look, some of these guys out there, I've seen 18, 19, 20-year-old soldiers, and those kids kick ass. And they're millennials too, so there's that. And then the final thing was, I just put this in Afterburner. It's going to show up in another week or two, looking into 2016 as just... 2016 is fog of war to me. It's just I can't make any sense out of what's going to happen. But we closed it, just got lucky, because the night before... Hang on a second. Who is it? Thought somebody was banging on the door. It turns out they were just banging on trash cans outside, and the ladies' room is on the other side of that wall over there. So, thought I heard somebody pounding. Anyway, one other thing you can say about millennials is this: it takes some getting used to for this old Apollo kid, but it takes a lot of getting used to. But I watched the video of the SpaceX landing the other night. Eisenfire, who's as you know, is the angel with the flaming sword who keeps the gates of the Stratosphere Lounge and so on. He sent me a text. He said, "Welcome to this sustainable space age." I said, "What happened?" I knew it must have happened late in the day because I had been watching Drudge and Instapunt most of the day. And then I saw the video, and he said, this was my moon landing moment. And it's not up there with the moon landing because I've seen them both, but I can connect to what he's saying. When SpaceX put that rocket down, they put it up there. They launched the second stage. Second stage went into orbit, deployed 11 satellites, and then they flew it back down, re-entered the atmosphere, I think at Mach 4, somewhere in there, turned itself on its tail, and flew itself down to a landing. Our friend Eisenfire pointed out to me something that I really wasn't aware of. We've seen this kind of hover test before, where a rocket goes up to a certain altitude, comes back down, comes down to a soft landing. And Bezos with the Blue Origins just did that. But as Eisenfire pointed out, those rockets are relatively low thrust rockets, and they can be throttled down to a point where you can actually hover the rocket. But the Falcon 9 was strong enough to put this payload into orbit, which meant that the rocket could not be throttled down enough to hover. That basically, I think they called it a smash hover, something like that. So basically what they're saying is, since this rocket cannot be throttled down enough to slow down and hover, the timing has to be perfect. It has to come down under power, and then at full power at the last minute, at the last instant, it's got to go to full power so that at full power it settles right onto the ground and doesn't bounce. And that makes it even harder. But the point I'm trying to make about the millennials is, like I said, I'm an Apollo guy, and I expect my mission controllers to have crew cuts and pocket protectors and wear short button-down shirts with ties. And to hear and see these millennials, because that's what they are, they're in their 20s, most of these people, 20s or early 30s, to hear the voices, these young voices, and then to see Mission Control with people in polo shirts if they were dressed up, a lot of them in T-shirts. It was like, man, I don't know, it was a bit of culture shock for me. But when they cheered and this thing landed, I thought, oh, these kids, and obviously Elon, they did it. These kids, they did it. And then they did something that actually made me cry. They did this giant mob of people outside, and the rocket was down. It was on the ground, and it was a success. It was an enormous success. And these people just started going, USA, USA. And I really got teary about that. It's like they had a right to be proud of themselves for what they did as a company. But for them just to spontaneously break out into cheers of USA really moved me and gave me a great deal of hope. Because, again, it was completely spontaneous. And they did something, these young people over at SpaceX did something that the Russians have never done, that the Chinese have never done, that the Europeans have never done, and that they basically considered to be undoable. They brought a rocket back down and landed it. And so this is significant, because if you can do this with the Falcon 9, you can do it with virtually any rocket. We all used to think that the only recyclable space program would be something like the shuttle, but the shuttle was an incredibly complex vehicle. And you can certainly make the case it was too complex. If you can put something into orbit, the Dragon capsule, where's the money is where I'm trying to say. Where's the cost? The primary cost is in the capsule, the part that goes into orbit. That's where all the avionics are and stuff. It's probably the most expensive single component, but a big part of the cost are the main engines and the main booster. Now, you're never going to get the second stage back or the third stage, because something has to actually get into a suborbital. When a spaceship goes into space, when you see a rocket go into space, it's not done. It's in an orbit that will bring it back down to crash back into Cape Canaveral from the west. It will go up and come around and land right back on Cape Canaveral from the other direction and break up coming into the atmosphere. So anything that gets into orbit gets up to apogee, up to its highest point or whatever its point, and then has to fire the rocket again to circularize the orbit. So that second stage or third stage isn't coming back. It's a relatively small expense, though. And SpaceX says, hey, look, if we bring the main stage back and we bring the capsule back and they're both reusable, just turn them around, you've cut a huge percentage out of what it cost to put things into space. It was an enormous breakthrough. It was a great, great day. It was the first time I've been proud of much of this private space stuff. I'm proud of Spaceship One. I'm proud of Burt Rutan. I'm not pleased. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not pleased, needless to say, that Spaceship Two came apart. But on some level, Spaceship Two coming apart means you're up there pushing the envelope. You're trying to do something that hadn't been done before. But this was the first time I was, in a long time, where I've been proud, but I haven't been moved. And I wasn't moved by the landing. I was proud of the landing, and I was pleased by the landing, but I wasn't moved by the landing. But when these kids started chanting USA, I was moved, and I realized I'm too hard on them. I'm generalizing. I don't know what percentage of them are social justice warriors and what percentage of them are potential SpaceX employees, but it's our job to make sure that more of them go into the latter camp than the former. And frankly, again, isn't it really just come down to saying, hey guys, it's okay to be men, it's okay to be women, and furthermore, it's okay to have a dream and go out and work for it. It's okay to work your life for a goal and be part of something, and you're a freaking rocket scientist, and you deserve to be paid well for that because you put a lot of time and effort into it. Isn't that better than just sitting around, our thatched huts, with our sustainable algae cakes and raising money for the Guatemalan water snake? Isn't that more fun? Fun's the word, man. I'm running 2016 on fun. That's the campaign. Fun. We have fun. They don't. Period. Choose carefully. And we still got a bunch of ground to cover. A little time. Susan Speakman says, I wish it were true that the abolition of slavery had been written into the Constitution originally, but it's not. Do you think race relations today would be any different if that had been true? They'd be very different because there wouldn't be race relations in this country in the way that we understand race relations. Sometimes it's nice to be able to just speak the truth the way it comes out. But basically, that's it. If it turned out that that slavery had been abolished in the Constitution originally, and slaves had been returned to Africa, then we would have a completely different country. And it would be better in some ways, and it'd be worse in a lot of ways. Most ways, I think it'd be worse. Every group that's come to this country one way or another has brought, irreplaceable people. I mean, just what would America be like without Italian immigrants, Just think of, Fermi and all the rest of these guys. What would it be like without anybody? If you take that huge section of our culture away, the country would be far poorer for it. The problem, of course, with slavery is it's a unique group. It's the only group that was brought here against their will. And the thing that I have such a major problem with, this is the tragedy of what I was talking about earlier with trying to get to the heart of this thing with Booker T. Washington is, it's true they were brought here against their will. It's true that it was the only group that was brought here against their will, but it's also true it was 7 generations ago. And this is the thing, right? It's like the shackles on the black population today, the chains on them today are mental chains, and they're mental chains that are put on them by people like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. They're the chains of saying that you're prisoners of a past that happened 160 years ago, 180 years ago, whatever. They're the chains of saying that that what happened to your great 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 grandfather has a bearing on you. Look, my grandfather didn't come. My grandfather immigrated to this country. Not my father. His father came here in 1915. So the slavery thing doesn't work on me. And even if my great 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 grandfather had been Nathan Bedford Forrest, it wouldn't have any impact on me, because what Nathan Bedford Forrest did doesn't affect me because I'm not him. I'm not responsible for things I didn't do. And this dependency on the handout as a look, it's easier to get a free check for something that happened 7 generations ago than it is to go out and work your ass off and be a rocket scientist, right? That's easier. And anytime you want to understand liberal politics, it all comes down to 2 things: cowardice, physical and moral cowardice, and laziness. Really pretty simple. Cowardice and laziness. That's what drives the progressive vision. We hate rich people because they're successful, because they work hard. Therefore, we want to take their money because we're lazy. We're afraid of the Russians, are better red than dead, and we're afraid of the Islamicists, so let's just tell them how swell they are, because we're cowards. Laziness and cowardice. That's all you need. That's the whole left right there. So look, if slavery had been abolished before first of all, Scott Ott, a great celebrity friend of mine who I just spoke highly of a few moments ago, but he wasn't here to hear it because he's funny that way. Scott will tell you that it's a question like what happens if the immovable force, if the irresistible force meets the immovable object. The Constitution could not have been ratified without slavery. It just wouldn't have happened. It couldn't have happened, or else it would have happened. You would not have a United States because the Southern colonies just wouldn't have been a part of it, and the Civil War would have happened in 1806 instead of 1860. But the thing that I think also needs to be said is, if slavery had not been part of America, all of the American blacks in America today would, on some level, be in Africa. And the richest black people in the world are American blacks. And likewise, the richest Mexicans in the world are Mexican Americans. The richest Swedes in the world are Swedish Americans. The richest English people in the world are Anglo Americans, and so on and so on and so on. So, Dr. Dirthmick, is saying only 33% of African Americans are descended from slaves. The other 67% are immigrants. That number seems about right. I didn't know what the actual percentage is. So so the black population here today, 1 out of 3 of them were slaves, descendant of slaves. And of the white population, I don't know what the number is. I'll bet it's even smaller. In fact, I know it's smaller because the Confederacy consisted of a small percentage of the population of the U.S., and the number of people in the Confederacy who actually owned slaves was microscopic. It was 5-6% of the total Confederacy in terms of the people fighting in the war owned slaves. It's silly, and it's tragic, and people just have to come out and say it. You have to come out and say it. You're enslaved by the Democratic Party, and they're making you think about things that happened 7 generations ago. And if you're not willing to settle for that, this is where my little argument ability comes in, my little ability to tell stories to make a point. If you think that nevertheless all of this white privilege has given you a head start that you didn't deserve, I'll just take a quick aside to say that the slaves did in fact build the southern cotton plantation system was built by black slaves. That was their work. But that system was totally destroyed in the Civil War. It did not survive the Civil War, needless to say. Slaves were liberated in the Civil War. So there is nothing in America today that was built by slaves. Things had been built by slaves, but they were destroyed in the war. So, let's just start there. But look, the argument I'd like to make is, if you say that, hey, you're asking for money from me for things that I didn't do, or my dad didn't do, or his dad didn't do, in order to make up payment to you for a crime that didn't occur to you or your dad or your granddad. Yeah, it doesn't matter though. Doesn't matter. We were held as slaves 400 years, 160 years ago. So white people owe us reparations. My response to that would be, okay, well, fair enough, if that's how you want to play it. But Africans in Egypt held the Hebrews as slaves for 1,000 years, and that happened. It was a much longer period of time, and it happened much earlier. So we'd be happy to cut you a check and everything, but before we cut you a check, every single black American in the country has to pay reparations to every single Jew in the country. All you black Americans out there are going to have to pony up hard and write checks to Jewish Americans because of how Egypt held the Jews in slavery. And if you say, well, that was a long time ago, my response would be, yeah, precisely. It was, wasn't it? It was a long time ago. Doesn't seem fair, does it, that blacks should have to write checks to Jews for the fact that Egyptians, who were Africans, held Jews in slavery for 1,000 years? Doesn't seem fair to me. But if we're going to be doing the reparations game, I say, Jesse Jackson, start writing a check to Alan Dershowitz directly, and we'll sort it all out later. I could probably do this one fast because it is in line of I wish it weren't. I wish it weren't true, but it probably is. No, I wish it were true, but it probably isn't. That's the theme. We'll do the next one next time. So I'll go through this real quick. Two people, virtually the same question. Michael Knopf said, even though those pencil-neck scientists tell us that FTL, faster than light travel, is impossible, as a lifelong sci-fi nerd, I believe it would be way super cool if it weren't. Should I hold on to this hope despite all the evidence to the contrary? And Matthew Lloyd says, I wish we could bend space-time or create some other form of interstellar travel during my lifetime. Possible, probable, question mark. In your lifetime, Matthew, I would say the chance of that's approaching 0. And Michael, I'll tell you my little story about FTL. I was, like everybody else, Science fiction nerd, I thought FTL was just the next thing, right? You just put enough power behind something, off you go. Einstein's got a lot to say about that, and none of it's good. What Einstein taketh away, he also giveth. Needless to say, I won't waste a lot of time with this. But basically, while Einstein says nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, he also says that as you get close to the speed of light, time slows down. So if you're on a spaceship, technically speaking, without violating any laws of physics, if you had enough energy, and it would take an awful lot of energy, but if you could get your spaceship up to 90, 95%, 96% of the speed of light, time slows down enough for you so that interstellar space travel is in fact possible. It's just you don't get to come home to the home you left. The home you come back to is 50 years, 100 years, 200 years in the past. Now, that to me is interesting, actually. The science fiction universe I'm working on in the distant future, I spent a lot of time on this when I was in my 30s. And once again, it's laziness. But if you think about it, if you grant that there's no such thing as faster than light travel, and you send a group out in a ship that's traveling at 98% of the speed of light, let's say, and let's say that they live in 2100, and off they go to Tau Ceti. It takes them 12 years at the speed of light, so let's say it takes them 20 years to get there, 16 years, acceleration, deceleration, so on. And then they come back, and it's 30 years later, it's 40 years later. Meanwhile, other groups have gone. And what it basically means is, in a universe that respected the laws, this would be interesting. You would have cohorts of people all throughout the galaxy, and I don't know whether they'd mix or not, because the best way to think of it would be, here I am, I'm about to go to the shopping mall, and in come people from, Spanish conquistadors from 1590, and they just got off of their spaceship, and they're 400 years out of date from where I am. What do we do? Cool. Anyway, the question of faster light travel, I wanted it forever, and then I went through a very long period, which still pretty much owns me, when I said, even the theoretical stuff, requires, you hear things like it would require as much energy as the output of a galaxy or stuff. I don't think we're done with multidimensional physics. I think we're just getting started with multidimensional physics. So far, the news is very, very bad. Einstein says it's not possible. The wormhole thing is a problem because, bending space and time and so on, and gravity and all this other stuff here seems like it requires huge amounts of energy. And the reason I say it requires huge amount of energy is if it takes mass to bend space-time, right? If a planet bends space-time, the gravity field of a planet is curved space-time in the fourth dimension, and a black hole is a super dense particle of mass that's really bending space-time. The problem with that is that mass is essentially, a good way to think of mass is condensed energy. There's just so much energy in matter. If you take a little ball of plutonium this big, smack it together hard enough, and that's a reaction that converts, what is it, 8% of the total energy available? Less, maybe more, 16, something like that. Boom. There's a lot of energy in matter. And if you have a little tiny p of energy and a little p of matter and a little p of antimatter, and you put the two together, you're gonna get quite a flash for your camera. So, again, the energy requirements seem very high. But theoretically, since I was a true believer in no faster than light travel, since then I'm seeing little signs, experimental signs that are showing me maybe. I mentioned this before. I'll mention it again. If you're interested in this kind of thing, go and look for a free software called Celestia. It's terrific. It's a solar system. It's not a simulator. I guess it's a simulator. It's the entire solar system. It's free, downloadable for free on the Mac and the PC. And all the planets are to scale, and all the orbits are to scale, and everything's to scale, and it's great. And on the Mac version, at least, I don't know if they've upgraded the PC version, but on the Mac version, you can set your speed. And so I traveled through the solar system at the speed of light. And, buddy, the speed of light is slow. It's slow. I mean, you see the Earth and the Moon, and they just come in, they're coming, and then, yeah, they blow by pretty quick. But you can tell. It took 8 minutes to get to the Earth from the Sun. Once you enter the Jovian system, if you turn it on with all the orbits are lit up, you enter the Jovian system at the speed of light from getting inside the outer moon, and it takes you something like, 20 minutes? 15, 20 minutes to get through this thing. You see these things peeling away, and Jupiter's there, and then the Galilean moons are there, and it's coming. You'd think it'd be like, no. If you're interested in this kind of thing, get Celestia just so you can see how slow the speed of light actually is. The speed of light is actually pretty slow. And needless to say, You think, man, okay, let's go to Celestia. We're going to hit the speed of light, and we're going to watch the stars do their dilation thing. No, you're out of your mind. You're moving at the speed of light, man. You're going to have to sit in front of your computer for 4.5 years before you see the first star show up on your doorstep. 4.5 years. So in order to get the Star Trek dilation effect, you go to 100 times the speed of light. You still can't see it. And I think you have to go to like kiloparsecs a second before you begin to see this thing. So, anyway, so much for the speed of light question. We've got a whole full page here to go. I think we knock some of them down here. What do we get? I should have pictures for this. Jason Rasmussen says, I wish to live in Sid Mead's world. Those 4 pictures, and then there's 3 on each side. They're all Sid Mead's work. Sid Mead was a futurist who drew in the early 1960s. I wish I lived in Sid Mead's world too. As it turns out, the 4 pictures behind me, I have to redo the order because one of them is a little tiny kid. It's probably a 7-year-old boy, and he's peering into what is a nuclear-powered RV, basically recreational vehicle. Clean, nuclear-powered, it's gigantic. And then there's one up on the top. It looks like he's an 18-year-old blonde kid, and he's hopping out of like a mono-wheel racer. He's got a nuclear-powered racer with one giant wheel, and he's just hopping out of it like a guy would hop out of a race car, and there's a couple of technicians there, and he's wondering if he just set the speed record. And then there's one of people with this kind of awesome sort of a little hover kind of, they're camping out in one of these great vehicles, and it's just everybody's healthy, and they're on the side of a river, and they've got their little boats and stuff. And the other one finally is a guy coming home to a super cool plastic house, and he's got his gorgeous blonde babe sitting there underneath some kind of yellow kind of, mobile, and she's dressed in, canary yellow, and it's like, honey, I'm home, and my nuclear-powered car is down there, and it's like everything was clean, everything worked. All these, he was a futurist for automotive industry, but very influential on everybody. And just looking at the Sid Mead stuff I have here on the walls in front of me, the one thing that Mead captured was that this technological future, there was no poverty. Now, that may, in my more enlightened days politically, be utopian, but I will counter by saying that there was nothing theoretically with it, I don't think, that would have prevented it from being utopian, because it's, as we said earlier, how do you have peace on earth? War is the resistance. Peace is the absence of resistance to capitalism. In this future, the one thing that's predominant in all of Sid Mead's future visions, in all of them, is there's lots and lots and lots of energy. Energy is free. It's just everybody's dressed, everybody's wealthy, everybody's doing what they want because these cars and everything around them is just powered by free energy. I don't think people are working on these vehicles. I think they're all built by robots. And why wouldn't they be? And why wouldn't you be able to just go zooming around or irrigate the desert or whatever? It all comes down to energy. And it looks like we've got a lot of energy that we can use. And I think that's related to one of the questions we got coming up. Yes, we do. Coming up in a minute. You know what? I'll take that question now. Jonathan K says, if I understand RK correctly, we had to get RK in here on the Christmas Eve show, last show of 2015. So, Jonathan K says, if I understand RK correctly, then isn't the premise of virtually limitless energy with no downside, as in the thorium reactors you mentioned so consistently, guaranteed to play straight into the hands of the R-selective abundance environment? To comply with this episode's theme, thorium might mean we can irrigate the deserts, but we'll probably just end up in those go-everywhere hover chairs like in Wall-E. It's a great point. Coupled with free energy or virtually free, limitless energy, you have to have a goal, right? I mean, you have to have a plan. If this our selection thing, this kind of using abundance and technology, not to make your life more interesting, but to make it easier. There's a big difference between those two things. In fact, they're antithetical most of the time. That's a failure of will, and I'm beginning to think it's a biological failure of will, but it's a failure of will. So, in other words, if you'd asked me when I was a boy, when society was so much healthier, so much more, K-selected, If you told me that in 2015 we would have all of the world's information available at your fingertip, and anything in the history records that you could be able to go back and look at. Last night I spent some time looking at the introductions to 60s television shows. I mean, everything was there, Space Ghost and Johnny Quest and It's About Time and, Love American Style. Everything I need to know is right there in your hand. And if you told me I had the technology where just on a simple device on your hand we can calculate orbits with incredible graphic precision, just by turning the device, we can look at the orbit, we can pinch on it, squeeze it, look at it. I would have said, wow, man, we got to be everywhere. Because we had the will, and we were trying to do with technology what we could. A couple people have said, I think one of the astronauts said, really have to understand the Apollo program was us reaching into the future 50 years and doing something that wasn't possible yet. So with all that said, if you're going to have abundant energy, there should be a reason why. What are you going to do with it? You're right. Is it just going to make everybody sit in in one of these gliding chairs and we don't have to do anything, but now we don't even have to move to play our computer games? Our robot will feed us, directly at our mouths. We don't have to get across the room. That's a failure of will. That's a failure of the software. This software. But for me, and for you, and for half the country, things like unlimited energy means unlimited opportunity to do cool things in the real world. Actually go out and do them. I have a good friend who I've been friends with since I was 10, and he really got into flight simulators. I think I've mentioned this before, but when I say really got into flight simulators, he'd fly like a twin-engine Baron around the world in real time. He wouldn't do the acceleration thing. He would carry enough fuel to get from Hawaii to, I don't know, part of the Aleutians or something. He'd take off from Hawaii, and then he'd hit cruising altitude over the Pacific, and he'd fly the flight sim for 6 hours. He'd be writing and doing other things, just nothing but waves for 6 hours. So on some level, he's flown around the world in real time. I mean, he's done it. He's landed at all these little airports, and he's been to every capital in the planet. He's flown either a Lockheed L-1011 or anything to every single capital in every single country in the world, and he's done it in real time. And on some level, that's really amazing and really cool. But on another level, it's really kind of sad, because seeing it for real is different than the simulation. The graphics are better, and they always will be. And the problem with these things like these first-person shooters or these worlds like that was that dragon game that came out. Anyway, these open worlds where you just get to go around and explore. They're filled with some adventure that you may not get in the real world, but certainly there is some adventure. But it's not the same sitting in your garage or your living room or your basement or your mansion, for that matter. Although people who sit around and play video games all the time don't have mansions. The real world is a lot more interesting, and I think you're right. There's a lot of people who would take advantage of energy to say, hey, now we can play all sorts of computer games. We don't even have to get off the couch. But for the rest of us, we would be doing awesome things, like flying Skyrim. Thank you very much, Foghorn. We'd be doing cool things with it, like desalinating deserts and going to Mars. And Mars is for wimps. We go all the way. We go to Jupiter. We go to the edge of the universe. So anyway, there we go. That's an interesting question. So I'm going to back up, see if I'm... there's 4 questions about Trump, and I'm just not going to take them. They're phrased correctly, and that's why I wrote them down. I wish it were true, but it probably isn't. Trump, that's Lee McCarthy. Paul Sullivan, I wish Trump was an actual Republican. Kyle Lamb, I wish it were true that Trump was loyal to the Republican Party and isn't out to screw us, but it's probably not. Matthew Lloyd, I wish Trump was really a conservative, but he probably isn't. What are the chances he'll make a good president if once he's selected? I'm not going to answer those right now. We'll do Trump. Not that I didn't take them. I wrote them down. But I'm running a little short on time, and we got plenty of time to talk about Trump in the next episode. So I'm just going to skip those, only to say that there won't be any shortage of Trump questions in Stratosphere Lounges in 2016. Dave Olson, our friend, says, I wish it were true that Stratacon would be a thing so we could all get together, but it probably isn't. It will be a thing. It's not the top of my priority list. But one of the things I mentioned earlier about having all of this content come to BillWhittle.com is it gives us a budget. And if we have a budget, we can do Stratacon. And Common Sense Resistance and the other movies too. So be of good cheer. We're trying to get things done in a way that's economically viable and sustainable, and my new operations manager, Carla, is just a wonder. She's just a wonder, and her husband is a wonder too. Just incredible people, and they're starting to make sense out of this business as a business. And as we said earlier, just for giggles, for those of you that may be joining us late, our friend Ian Branson, who's a regular Stratolounger, is either right now on the hamster wheels, but this is the mock-up for BillWhittle.com new version that's going to be big and bold, and that, just to repeat if you're new, that center thing, big thing on the top where it says, "Can we finally call this Islamic terrorism now?" That's going to be an animation of the pitch video for membership, which is going to be striking, shattered glass kind of thing. And then the stories will be big and bold, and we're just going to make it look much more 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever. And we also finally got, if you look at the banner here, you'll see that what Ian did was he made it very, very clean. It looks great on a mobile device right at the top. Hopefully he took the cue off of what I did, because the bottom banner, I think, is our new look for the Common Sense Resistance. And as I said earlier, I'm just really, really, really fond of that. Ian's in the chat room. He says he's on the wheel. Presumably he's coding and watching the show at the same time. But anyway, yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff coming up in 2016 for us, so I'm real excited about that. Let's see. And Stratacon is one of them. I think we have 3 or 4 to go. Maybe we're not on time. Yeah, we're fine. Joanna Hunt says, "I wish it were true, but it probably isn't, that we could get back to a sound currency. What say you? Could America return to a silver or gold standard? Would it be a gradual change or the result of rebuilding after a dollar crash?" Wow, it's a great question. Needless to say, the idea of the gold standard can be summed up pretty simply. You can print money, but you can't print gold. I've heard many people who are much more versed in economics than I am who said that the gold standard really is not realistic. That while a great deal of money has been inflated, and while a great deal of money is fiat money that's not connected to anything, the fact of the matter is that the economy of the world now is so enormous. I think Dinesh D'Souza in his book was saying that the estimate for the amount of private property, he was talking about Stealing America, I think it's called. He was talking about how all of progressive politics are essentially just a giant heist. And so he started that chapter by saying, what's the most valuable thing in the world? If you wanted to steal something, what's the most valuable thing in the world? And Dinesh said that, in his opinion, the most valuable thing in the world is the private property held by the American people, which comes to $71 trillion. There's $71 trillion of private property in this country, apparently. And so if you're gonna do a heist, might as well go for the big pot, right? And that's $71 trillion. So look, you can't really connect $71 trillion plus the economy of the rest of the world, which is easily $100 trillion, I would say, at least that. My God, it's got to be at least that. Maybe $200 trillion total. I don't know. But there's not enough gold for that. However, with that said, the idea of a gold standard is superb because the gold standard was you can print money, but you can't print gold. Gold is constant in value. So how do you get back to a currency that works? When we did it for a while, it just like anything else in this world, it just requires discipline, right? I mean, you'd basically have to pay off this debt or do something along the lines of paying off this debt, and you'd have to simply eliminate this idea of fiat currency, that you can't just print money. Maybe require a constitutional amendment. I mean, I don't see any of this particularly happening voluntarily. I'm sure it will happen involuntarily. But if you were to do it voluntarily, you probably would need a constitutional amendment that was a balanced budget amendment, and also an amendment that, that basically, you could probably do this in one amendment, that called for a balanced budget with a surplus of a set amount for a set period of time until the debt was paid off. And I think that's where you're looking at 50 to 100 years, something like that. And from that point forward, you could not simply print money. You could increase the monetary supply to match the economy, and I'm not very clear on how that works. I know it can work, That you're not just printing money just to have money to spend that wasn't there before. Because when you print money out of nothing, it makes the existing money worth less. It makes it worthless over time. So I think that could probably be accomplished. And I think that once you set a path to, hey, we're from now on we're in the black. The government's in the black, and from now on we're paying down the debt. And if we were to look at it that way and treat money like it was real money, like it was our money instead of somebody's money, then we would basically say, well, what are we actually paying for here in terms of federal taxes? And I gave this some thought. It's like, what is an appropriate tax burden for the American people? And the answer is to frugally pay for all of the parts of the government that are outlined in the Declaration of Powers. When the Constitution says here's what the federal government is supposed to do, then we need to pay for those things as frugally as possible. And we need to get rid of two things that are driving this budget up among many things. The first thing we need to get rid of is cost-plus purchasing, where Lockheed Martin decides to build the F-35 fighter, let's say, and it's on a cost-plus basis, which means that the federal government's going to pay Lockheed Martin what it costs to build the fighter. Then they're going to add some percentage of profit. Let's just say for the sake of it, 6%, just whatever it is. So if you've got a fighter and you're on a cost-plus procurement plan, what does that do to incentive? Well, if you're Lockheed Martin and you get 6% of what it cost as profit, and you don't have to pay any of these costs, the government's going to pay the cost no matter what the cost is, and you get a percentage of the profit based on the cost, then what do you want to do to the cost? You want to run the cost up as high as you possibly can, right? That's why this program costs $1 trillion and it doesn't work, because it's cost plus. If, on the other hand, we were buying a next generation fighter jet and we were doing it the way we used to do it, we would say, hey, we've got, pick a good sized number, we've got $200 billion to spend, aviation companies, $200 billion, we're going to need 1,000 of these things. And we had $200 billion to spend for it. That's our budget. That's what we're going to spend. And then, this would be back in the days when they were independent companies, then Northrop and Lockheed and Boeing and North American and Grumman and all these guys would build a fighter at their expense. They would put their own company money into it. You'd have 4 or 5 of these different models, and they would have a fly-off. They'd just run them through the paces, and whichever one performed the best got the whole pot. Congratulations, Boeing. You've got the best design, and through all the different tests we've run, maybe you didn't win all of them, but you're the best airplane out of the bunch that were selected. You get the $200 billion, and that's what it costs. And we have a contract now. We're going to get 1,000 planes for $200 billion. And if your costs go higher, that's unfortunate for you, but we're not paying a penny more, and we are going to get our 1,000 planes, and they are going to do what this plane did. See? Now, where's the incentive? Now the incentive is to get them out the door cheaply and quickly and efficiently and, on budget. So that's one thing you got to get rid of. And Scott and I were talking about this the other day on Trifecta between the segments. One of the things that's just got to happen is we've got to get back to blank sheet budgeting. Most people don't realize this. I'm not very well versed on this myself, but most people don't realize that we don't sit down and say how much money does NASA need this year. What we do is we say how much money did NASA spend last year, and what are we going to raise it by? 6%, 2%, 1%, or is going to raise it, never going to lower it. And that's why agencies spend all of the money they have and ask for more. You may not need, not to put too fine a point on it, folks, but NASA's budget in 2014 was $8.5 billion, I want to say, and it was $8.5 billion in constant dollars in 2006. And the only difference between the $8.5 billion they spent in 2006 and the $8.5 billion they spent in 2014 was in 2006 they were flying space shuttles into space, and in 2014 they're not. We're not flying anything into space. So why does it have the same budget? If we cut the space shuttle program, and that was an expensive program, you would think that NASA's budget would be drastically reduced, but you'd be wrong, because all budgets are immortal and they grow like cancer. They never get smaller, they only get bigger, and they cannot be killed ever. So if you were to basically say every year, nope, we're not going to take the existing budget and add a percentage, we're just going to say, make the case for what you need, and we'll review it, and we'll see if it looks like it's reasonable, the same way you would do with any kind of estimate if somebody wanted to put an extension on your house. That's what you do. You get a budget proposal. You'd look at it and you'd say, yeah, this seems reasonable. This seems a little high. This guy's kind of lowballing it. Boom. it's a standing army. NASA's a job program. The TSL is the TSA is a jobs program. The TSL is a jobs program for yours truly, but that's the Stratosphere Lounge. The Transportation Safety Authority is a jobs program. It hires hundreds of thousands of people, and we did a test recently where they tried to sneak bombs and weapons through the TSA, carefully, kind of a red flag operation where we test our own defenses. And I would have been shocked. I would have been shocked if 5% of the weapons and bombs gotten through. If 5% of the total attempts had succeeded, I would have been shocked and appalled. Turns out that 95% of them got through. They stopped 5%. 95% of the fake weapons and bombs that they tried to get through the TSA got through. 95%. Where, except for the government, would that program and those administrators and those people responsible still be employed? Where, except for the government, if you did 5% of the work that you were supposed to do? And in a world where a 1% failure could be catastrophic. Is a term for manufacturing, and again, it's not my strong suit, but there's a manufacturing term, and I know the comment section is probably going to light up, but I think it's a 6 Sigma, and I think that means it's 6 standard deviations. It's a measure of quality control, and basically a 6 Sigma is 6 standard deviations. That means that the percentage error, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's fractions of 1%, small fractions of 1%. That's considered acceptable manufacturing error, and 95%. Yeah, if you had a company that was a private security company, let's say you're doing a concert, and you found out that 100 people tried to get in illegally, and 95 of them succeeded. What would you do with that private company? You betcha. Okay, 3 to go. Dave Olson says, I wish it were true that Bill Whittle was getting the Free Frontier Foundation up and running, but it probably isn't. Once again, I hate to sound, I know that seems a little depressing that we haven't made more progress on that or the movies, but one thing I did realize, to my benefit and hopefully to yours too, is that there is in fact a plan and that things have to happen in order, and I thought the movies would be happening this year or even last year, but they didn't. And the reason is because things have to happen in order. So just very quickly, the master plan is pretty simple. The master plan was work on the movies and do the political stuff, and I realized I can't do that. I can't get the script written. I can't get the big bad script written because I'm writing so much stuff. I think Scott will tell you, we do 5 trifectas a week in one day. Plus I do hot seats, and I do afterburners every other week, and I have members-only content here. I'm putting out 6-7 videos a week, and I just couldn't get it written. So the plan is still in place, but here's how it looks. We're going to do political messaging, nothing but political messaging, as hard as we can, all the way for the first time ever. I mean, all the way until Inauguration Day. And then we're going to do Big Bad Problems. And after Big Bad Problems, we're going to do the Common Sense Resistance, which will usher in the real-world Common Sense Resistance. And after that, we're going to do Aurora, and Aurora is going to usher in the Free Frontier. I think these things need to be connected. I think in the case of the Common Sense Resistance and in the case of the Free Frontier, you have to show people what it's going to look like if it's going to take off. And I think, well-made movies can do bountiful business, and especially well-made movies that are connected to the real world. Star Wars is an example. And look, on some level, it's a great example because it's a cultural changing example, and I don't pretend to be able to deliver Star Wars, but Star Wars is... Star Wars fandom doesn't accomplish anything, if that makes any sense. In the same way that Star Trek fandom doesn't accomplish anything. It's fun, and it's a social activity, and it's a passion, and people love it, and I get all that. But if you can do something like make a movie called The Common Sense Resistance and show what the world will be like if we don't get together and form these non-hierarchical networks, then the fandom that follows the movie has an actual real-world benefit. And really, the movie's just the icebreaker. Once you set up the movie, and then there's sequels, obviously, but once you set up the movie and show what the Common Sense Resistance could be on camera, then you say to people, and there's no reason why we can't do this in the real world right now, then you hope that that would be the case. And likewise for Aurora. I mean, if you're going to talk about the free frontier, if we're going to talk about a space program funded by the American people, you have to show them visually in a movie and explain to them throughout the course of the movie that we can go to anywhere in the solar system right now with nuclear rocket technology that was developed in 1968. And it's just a matter of the will and the money. And if you show them that, and you show them vehicles like the Aurora that look like the space station with a couple of clusters of radiators on there and a little tiny nuclear rocket like like in the NERVA program, then you've got something to advertise, right? You got something to make the case, and you can go around doing the rounds of the movie promotion and say, hey, and you can literally at the end of the movie, you can say, hey, if you like the movie, we can make this happen for real, and here's how you do it. And then, you can also take things like if the movie's successful, and look, I'm not going to waste a lot of time with this, but the way we plan to make movies is we plan to make them for next to nothing. We're going to make them for the lowest negative cost possible so that investors get dug out of this hole fast. Then we'll take our profits on the back end. Then you can take movie money, if the thing's somewhat of a success, and you're talking millions of dollars, and you can use that money for advertising and promotion to make the free frontier happen. If I were to launch it now, Dave, it would go over with a big smash among 5,000 people, and then it would just be out there and done and a failure. So we got to hold it until it's time to give it. We got to hold it until releasing it has a chance to succeed. And so that's the plan for that. So anyway, I didn't want you to get discouraged. It's still out there. 2 to go. Randy Schnickel. Looks right. Asks, don't you wish you had lightsabers? I don't. I've never wanted a lightsaber, but I've wanted a phaser since I was a little kid. I'm not into melee weapons. I'm into projectile weapons. I want to shoot people from far away. I genuinely have noticed, ever since I saw the lightsaber, first time I saw it, and I understand this maybe is a generational thing, maybe it's just a personal preference thing. I just grew up on ray guns. I grew up on Johnny Quest, and you got these frogmen in the Sargasso Sea, and they're shooting lasers at things. I'm a ray gun guy. I'm a ray gun man, and I always have been a ray gun man. God bless Reagan. And when I saw the lightsaber in the first Star Wars movie, I thought it was cool looking, but I never had any desire one. I would have much rather had Han's blaster than Luke's lightsaber. Much, much rather. And I don't think it happened in the first movie. It might have only been the second movie or even the third movie, but I didn't see anybody deflecting any blaster bolts with a lightsaber. That came in later. I don't think that happened in the first movie. Couldn't have. Because the only person skilled enough to use it would have been Obi-Wan, and he didn't deflect any laser blasts, I don't think. You see Luke kind of doing it in practice, but Anyway, listen, I'd rather have Han's blaster than Luke's lightsaber, and I would much, 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 much rather have James T. Kirk's Phaser Mark II, because that thing you could have some fun with that thing. Speaking of which, hey, I'm going to put it in the commercial here now. I'm going to put a post up tomorrow. I should have done it tonight. I'll do it when the show's over. Our friend Alfonso Rachel has created a lightsaber. And what it is it's got a slightly larger handle than in the things, but it's just a working prototype, and the thing telescopes out, and literally the thing comes out, and he wants to get it lit on the inside. He's setting up a GoFundMe kind of a thing, and I'll send a link to that on the Facebook page. If you ever wanted to help a good guy out, so's the guy. He's a huge science fiction fan, and it looks a lot like. Sure looks like a lot like a lightsaber. I mean, click this button, out this thing comes, and if he had the money through the crowdsourcing, he'd get the thing lit, and he'd get the sound effect behind it, and then it retracts. How cool is that? So, yeah, I'm not a sword guy. But it's so funny, because I was thinking about this, because I did see the Star Wars movie, and I liked it very much. We'll talk about that later. But, one thing that occurred to me, and I completely forgot about it, but somebody just think about this, okay? So you got two guys dueling with lightsabers, right? And it's an energy beam, and it's an energy beam of a certain length. But if it were me, and I was making my own lightsaber, I'd make mine 13 feet long. That's what I would do. I would make mine go out about 10 feet, and then I'd say, come on. I'd just stick people with a 10-foot pole. Why not? Why not? why does this thing have to be limited? And that's another question that those awesome guys on Red Letter Media brought up, is that in their critique of, I want to say it was Revenge of the Sith, they were saying, look at this lightsaber. Some of these Jedi have these, either like long hairs or tentacles or stuff, and they're waving this thing around. They got this lightsaber here. They said they would have cut their own heads off in no time. And why does Yoda's lightsaber, why is that lightsaber the same length as the human lightsaber? You think it'd be a lot smaller. They make a great sound, and visually they're very interesting, but I've never, ever, ever, ever had a desire to have a lightsaber. But a blaster, yes, and a phaser, you betcha. Last question from Justin Whitsett. Very kind question. President Cruz, Vice President Trump, Secretary of State Ben Carson, Secretary of Defense Bill Whittle. I've spoken many times about how much I'd like to be Secretary of Defense. My feeling is if the Secretary of Defense can't land an F-18 Hornet on the deck of a carrier unassisted, then he's probably not the guy you want, and I can do that. I swear I can. But the reason I wanted to take this question was just to bring up one point that I've been thinking about quite a lot. I joke about it as much as I'd like to. Needless to say, I'm not temperamentally suited to be the Defense Secretary. But there is one thing I could do. And that this is a political job I would like to do. If Ted Cruz becomes president, I will in fact email him about this, and I will tell him somebody needs to be put in charge of this program, and I'm the guy. What I would do if I was the Secretary of Defense is this. I would basically say to the American people, all of our warriors have been pushed out of the military. So many of these guys have been pushed out because of orders that came down from the Obama administration, making it intolerable in many cases. This business I told you about where the guy was training Green Berets and his commanding officer said, you need to question your men about whether or not they have weapons at home, and if they do, we need to know how many and what kind. And he said, sir, I'm not going to obey that order. That kind of thing. Little things like I mentioned, the CPO, been in the Navy for 27 years, is getting out because it's not fun anymore. What do you mean? It used to be Liberty. You'd get ship a dock at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday and sail at 9 a.m. on a Saturday, and what we did between them was our business. We didn't care. We went out and had fun. We called it Liberty because that's what it was. We were at liberty, and we had money to spend, and we spent it. We had great times. It made being in the Navy worthwhile. Now, this CPO, almost 3 decades, says, now when we get off the ship, we have to call in every 12 hours, and we have to stay at specially approved motels and hotels, and we can only visit certain restaurants and bars. Certain areas are off limits. They treat us like we're 6-year-old children, so they're getting out. And this is not coincidence. They're making the rules in the military for children so that the adults who actually want to get in there and fight wars are forced to leave. They just either forced out because it's inconsistent with their honor, or they leave because it's not fun anymore. So what I would like to do for the Defense Secretary is this. I would simply like to say, if you are a member of the armed forces who, for whatever reason, have left the military in the last 10 years because of changes to the military that you didn't like, the Secretary of Defense has been authorized by the President to say this to you. If you come back, you'll come back at the rank you left, and you will be paid for every day that you were gone at your previous pay rate. You will be paid for every day you were not in the military, as a way of us telling you, we don't think you should have left. We don't blame you for leaving. It was our fault that you left, and things are different now. But we want you to come back. We need your expertise, and we need you to undo all this damage. So come back at your previous rank, and if you were gone for 5 years, then you get pay for the last 5 years. You get back pay. Please help us return this military to what it used to be. I think that would go over well. I really do. I think that's I really think that's exactly what we should do. Is we should just tell them, hey, we know why you left, and now you need to come back, and we're going to pay you for every day you were gone. I think that would appeal to a lot of people, especially if you told them, look, come back, and we need your expertise. We earned this. We had and still have the only combat hardened military in the world. We really are the only country in the world that not only has the most powerful military in the world, but our military has been fighting for 15 years now. and did pretty well before that in Desert Storm. But for 15 years now, we've been getting combat experience, and we pay for it very high price. We pay for a high price in treasure and especially in blood. We learned a lot of lessons over there, and we learned how to do a lot of things, and that experience is invaluable, irreplaceable, and very costly. It's a very, very high value asset. In fact, in my opinion, it's the highest value asset. The experience that we've gained is worth more than the F-35 or the F-22. It's worth more than a new submarine. It's worth more than a new battle tank. My TV just went out. That's probably, hopefully, because I didn't do any inputs for a long time. That's interesting. Hopefully, it'll come right back on again. I think it didn't touch anything for an hour, and I think the thing just went to sleep. Let's hope that's the case. Hang on a second here. Is it waiting for an input? Because if it just went out, I know you can see me. I can't see anything. I can't shut the show off if this thing doesn't come back. Hey, there it is. Okay, that was exciting. That's never happened before. I guess I usually have my hand on the mouse or doing something, but yeah, the TV just went to sleep or the computer went to sleep. So I'd get them all back. That's what I would do. I'd get them all back, and I think that will do it for this evening. Honestly, it looks like we're at 2:01 of content time, and that's enough for me for one night, I think. As always, I can't thank y'all enough. I think I'll play. I think I'll play out what we played in on, and I guess I'll just close by saying Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you once again for an incredible year. Thank you so much for all of your support and kindness. And 2016 is going to be just a fog of war and a big old battlefield. We'll have a lot to talk about, but we are coming back again, thanks to Ian and that new look on the website and everything. So the new content, all kinds of fun things. And I think what we'll do is we'll probably miss next week's show, and then we'll just do one when we got everything up and running, and it'll be January 2nd or 3rd, something like that. So until then, I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and I'm going to play us out with what we played us in with. And everybody out there, have a really Merry Christmas, and don't let these miserable swine get you down, especially on a day like, Christmas. It's a magical time, and don't let them steal it from you. Okay, so until next year, I'm Bill Whittle. I hope you enjoy this, and we'll see you soon.